Aloha everyone, it's Kona Raven, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about die cuts. So recently I found myself using die cuts to create borders for the flaps and pockets in my mini albums, and I just wanted to share my experience using them. So the first thing I looked for when I was looking for a die cut was the size, and by size I mean the length of it. When I was searching, I found these two on scrapbook.com. These are Spellbinders die cuts, and these two come in a pack of 6 and 7. And what's nice is that they have these nice straight edge borders. So these 3 borders here are, again, Spellbinders dies. They are 6 inches in length, but you can see here, let me lift this one up. You can kind of see, hopefully, the notches that are in these die cuts. And that's really great for 2 reasons. One, it really helps so that you can line up your cardstock or paper. And 2, it gives you 3 different sizes to play with when you're creating your flaps or pockets. So the interior notches are 4 1/4 inches wide. The exterior notches are 5 1/2 inches wide, and the die cut itself is 6 inches. So I have 3 different sizes to choose from, which is really nice. And the second thing I looked for was the type of die cut. So this was the first one I picked, and I liked it because it had a kind of a tab look to it. But what I didn't realize is this little curve here and this little flare was going to create an overlap so that my decorative paper overlapped the decorative border on my cardstock. So I had to adjust or cut out this little notch here so that my paper slid in and aligned perfectly with my cardstock border. So it was after the fact that I found these two, which are great because they don't require you to make any type of adjustments. As you can see, there's no extreme curves or flares, which allows you to just cut your cardstock and your decorative paper and then align both of them. No adjustments. So I'm going to show you how I created my decorative flaps and pockets. So first things first, here's the cardstock that I'm going to use for my flap. So the measurements are 5 1/2 by 4 1/4, but with the 1/2 inch hinge that leaves 5 1/2 by 3 3/4. So what I did is I cut my decorative paper to 5 1/4 inches by 3 3/4. And the reason why I cut it to the same length is because once I use the die cut, I wasn't sure exactly how much of the paper would be cut off, and I want to make sure that I size it to my cardstock without having a large gap at the bottom. You're going to need a washi tape or something that has a really low tack so that you can remove it easily. The first step is to temporarily attach your decorative paper to the center of your flap. And how I did that was I just grabbed my ATG gun and ran itty bitty pieces of score tape to the back of it in 2 places. And then you're going to center it on your flap and attach it. Something I found out is that you cannot put 2 pieces of decorative paper onto your cardstock because depending on the die cut, these Spellbinders die cuts will only go through 1 layer of decorative paper and 1 layer of cardstock, but it won't go through anything more. I found that out the hard way. Alright, the next step is to line up your die cut, either the edges of your die cut or your notches, with your cardstock. So this is again 5 1/2 inches, so 5 1/2 inches are these notches here. So I'm going to line up the edges of my cardstock with my die cut, and then I'm going to line up the tip and the top edges of my die cut with the top edge of my cardstock. And then I'm going to get my washi tape, and you're just going to rip off a tiny piece, and you're going to adhere the die cut down to your cardstock. And you want to do that in 2 places so that it doesn't teeter-totter when you run it through your cutting machine. And when that's through, you're going to grab it and run it through your die cut machine. And once that's been done, it's going to look something like this. Alright, so there's the excess. And then you can pop this off. And okay, so it took off a little of the cardstock, but that's alright because this whole surface is going to be covered with decorative paper anyway. The next step is to line up your decorative paper with your decorative edge, giving it a nice border. And then you're going to get a pencil or pen and you're going to mark where you're going to cut the excess paper off. And then you can go ahead and cut that little piece off. Once that's cut and you've attached it, it should be perfectly aligned. Just like this. And then you're going to essentially use the same technique to create a pocket. And then I'm going to get my die cut. Actually, I think I'm going to use this one this time. That way I can show you how I adjusted the edges to make it fit. Again, you're going to take your die cut and you're either going to align the edges of the die cut or the notches with your cardstock, and then you're going to align the top of it with your cardstock. And then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to use washi tape to hold it down. And you're going to adhere your die cut down to your cardstock and decorative paper in two places. And then just run it through your die cut machine. It's going to look something like this. Again, detach your decorative paper and then line it up. You can see here that this rounded edge kind of overlaps the border. So all I do is take a pencil and I'm going to make an adjustment. And it doesn't matter how you adjust it. Does it need to be rounded the same? Probably not. So I'm going to cut those two off completely. Oops, wait, before I remove it, I'm going to mark it at the bottom. So to make your adjustments, you just get your scissors and cut off where you drew your lines. And when you lay it back on, you can see that you have a nice border. So now I've showed you how to do the one side where we line up the card and the paper and then we cut both. But now I have to show you how to do the decorative paper and align it perfectly on the inside, because you no longer have the ability to stack both of them up and cut both at the same time. So first things first is you get a piece of decorative paper and you make sure that there is an overlap. So you're going to center it and temporarily attach it to the card. Then you're going to flip it over and you're going to trace the decorative edge onto your decorative paper. And then you would attach your die cut by lining it up with that traced edge. And then you would use washi tape to attach your die cut to the paper, and then you would cut it out on your cutting machine. Alright, so that is my experience on how to use die cuts for my flaps and pockets of my mini albums. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Aloha!